12 years ago, I was sitting where you guys are, and I was pretty much hopeless. I wasn't sure I was going to get out. I had just gotten out of serving 4 years out of a 7-year sentence. Oops, sorry. And I was ashamed, completely ashamed. But this all started way many more years before that. I'm not going to actually blame my mom or blame the reason that I was poor or any of those reasons, but those were circumstances that led me to where I ended up. As a child, I was one of those kids who absolutely loved movies, and I ended up watching one too many Godfather and Scarface movies. Because by the time that I was around 8 or 9 years old, my favorite game to play was cartel and kidnappers with my friends. And I never wanted to be a cop. I always wanted to be on the cartel side, and I always wanted to be a boss, but it was really funny because I'm just this little girl who has this little like Minnie Mouse voice, and I don't look harmful at all. But I had this thing about people that I just didn't respect anybody since I was a child. I had seen a lot of people get beat up. I was beat up as a child. My mom didn't really do a good job raising me, not because she wasn't a good mother, but because she had to work. So she always gave me to other people to take care of me. And other people who would take care of me, they were pretty horrible. They would beat my ass, they would tie me, they would force me to eat stuff. So really quickly, by the time that I was 6 or 7 years old, I already had no respect for authority. I knew if you were a teacher, I knew if you were going to tell me what to do, I absolutely wanted nothing to do with you. But I was also mad. And I didn't want to accept the fact that I was mad because my mother wasn't there. I needed a dad, I needed brothers, I needed people to take care of me, but there wasn't. So I remember one day after I had seen all those movies, I was sitting on the balcony and this lowrider drove by and it caught my attention because I'll never forget that Sapp and Rogers song playing and the speaker going boom, boom. And as soon as they drove by me, there was 2 guys and a girl and there was a baby in the car. And I'm not sure why, but they tossed the baby out of the car. And when the baby fell right by my feet, it kind of freaked me out and it panicked me. And they all started to laugh. And the people who were taking care of me, instead of going to help the baby, the first thing that they did was kind of cover my eyes and tell me, don't go help. But it made such a big impression on me to see this big guy kind of toss that baby, no one tell him anything, that 2 things happened to me. I said, I want to have the power he has, even though I'm a girl. And second of all, I want to make sure that when I do have this power, I'm going to also utilize it, but I'm not going to treat kids bad. So as I started getting a little bit older, by the time now I'm around 10 years old, my mom ended up tricking me. She told me to pack all my stuff because we were going to go to Disneyland. We were poor, so going to Disneyland was kind of a big deal. We lived in the Pico Union area here in Los Angeles. We always lived with other people. She never had enough money to pay for her own house. So it was really yucky kind of going from place to place. So I packed all my stuff. We're going to Disneyland. We get on the Greyhound bus. But around 7 days and 7 nights later, we're still on this damn Greyhound bus. And I couldn't understand why. And now we're crossing the border to Montreal, Canada, because my mom had decided that she's going to move because it's gang infested. And we're just going to pick up and become refugees in Canada. So I was really bummed, I was really angry. I didn't even know what Canada was. It was snowing, they spoke another language. I couldn't even figure that out. And as soon as we got there, what they did was that they put us in this home with a bunch of refugee people from all over the world. People from Turkey, from Romania, and I didn't even know those were countries. Turkey, I thought it was something that you ate. So as I was with all these people sharing a bathroom and trying to live and not even understanding, I was so upset because I now for sure thought the Godfather must live in LA. There's no way I'm going to get in touch with him. So what do I do now? How am I going to become a badass? There's absolutely no way. So I start school, and over there it's kind of, they have this ESL, but over there it's for French. Okay, so they put me in this all French class. And one of the things when I introduced myself, as soon as I said I'm from Los Angeles, I heard all the kids go, ooh. So I said, oh, maybe this is my way in. I'm going to use that as my badge. So I learned how to speak French. I stayed in the school with my mom, and after I'd been there for about a year and I understood how to speak French, I would kind of notice everyone was smoking weed, and I would ask them, who gave you that weed? Because whoever gave you that weed got it supplied by somebody who got it supplied by somebody. And eventually, I would get to the Godfather himself, and I was going to go tell him that I would be a good soldier, that he needed a woman on his team, and that I would be loyal and honest, and I was willing to follow all directions. So in no time, all the seniors and all the older kids, they kind of liked me because I would usually tell them, no, that's not what you should wear. You shouldn't wear Reebok, you should wear Nikes. And they wear Ben Davis, and they put them down. And I was just giving them all these tips. And I didn't really know. I was just a kid who had seen it on the street because I wasn't gang related yet at the time. And I ended up getting into a lot of trouble, started ditching school. I still hated authority. And by now I had lost all respect for people, especially women. I don't know what it was about women that I thought they were really weak, because I always seen the majority of women always be puppets to the dudes and the homies that I would hang out with, and I didn't like it. I liked the respect that these men had, and I would like that it was kind of like in the movie, they would give all these orders to people and you would go do it. But I also ended up falling in love with cocaine. And by the time that I was 14 years old, I started using cocaine a lot. And it was easy for me to get a hold of it because with the older people that I would hang out in school, I would kind of sell, you know, a quarter bag for $20, and I would always make sure that I would pretend that I would lose one, but no, it was for me. So with all that time ended up coming, I ended up using a lot of cocaine. I ended up ditching a lot of school, and then my mom, she just decides that I'm getting into too much trouble, so she sends me with some friends back to Los Angeles. So I ended up spending the next 3 to 4 years going back and forth from Montreal to LA. And it wasn't good because every time she'd send me to LA, this is when I joined the gang, and I had absolutely no supervision. It was like me running around with a bunch of cockroaches. Anything you could think of, I was willing to do. And me, what I loved about it, and I think was the worst for me, was that I actually loved the rush. I remember one time I woke up because I had gotten so high and drunk, and I was really, really, really upset the following morning because I couldn't laugh with everybody. I didn't remember what had happened, but I was also scared because it was kind of like, I want to be a badass, but I want to be a badass like the guy in the movies, like Tony Montana and all those guys. I want to remember what I did. So I decided from that day on that I would get high and drunk, but I would just never, ever, ever do it when I would commit a crime. And I ended up liking to be the driver at first, trying to take them to rob. It started from going to liquor stores to then you graduate to home invasions, and I looked so properly. I decided never to get tattoos. I was the one who would go knock on doors, make sure no one was there, and it just got really out of control and ugly by then. I had decided that I was going to make a lot of money, supposedly in my deluded, stupid mind, with all these drugs that I was selling, and I tried to become a pimp. So I pimped my first woman out. I made $50, and I said, nah, there's no money in pimping. These girls are just too much trouble. I don't want to do it. And it was really hard for me also to get this, but I also had the backing of a lot of these guys who were the bosses and who ruled the gangs, because I was always such a go-getter and loyal. Whatever they said I was willing to do, and I was always bringing them new opportunities. Like, listen, there's this house maybe we can go. There's these people I met with some sort of money. There's this happening. So finally, but I was still a criminal who was still going to school. For some reason, I was enrolled at Cal State Long Beach, and I stayed going to school. So it was a really bad life. The last time I was in Canada, I ended up getting arrested, but in Canada, it's a little bit different than it was here. In Canada, as long as you're 18 years old and you didn't kill anybody and you have no ID with you, they pretty much let you go that same day. So a lot of my friends had gone, and I had made up some story, and this is what I mean about I didn't care people. Some guy just pushed me, and I pretended to say that he stole drugs from people, whatever, and they ended up going and really doing harm and stabbing this poor guy, but I just didn't care. So now I'm 19 years old, I'm back in Los Angeles, I end up getting pregnant, and I just decide that my son, I don't know, it's really a sad story, because for a woman, when you have a kid or you're pregnant, you would think it would affect you, it would do something to you. But no, my baby shower was a big gangster party. There was around 120 homies that came. it was kind of delusion that I had in my mind. I didn't stop gangbanging until I was 2 weeks before I went into labor. And when I went into labor, I decided to call nobody. I decided to get on the car myself and drive myself to Cedars-Sinai. But I returned home halfway because I forgot the stereo, and there was no way that I was gonna drive without music. Like, no way. Okay, so I get to the hospital, my water breaks. I have my son, but no connection. It's hard for me to explain, and even till now, I'm ashamed of it, but it's the honest truth. It was as I seen someone else's baby. There was absolutely zero connection, and all I could think of is to go out and have that thrill again, that adrenaline. It was like I was a junkie to the adrenaline. I just wanted to go out and tax people on the street, go do drive-bys, whatever you could. And it wasn't because I needed or I was forced to do this, it was just a certain addiction to the life. You know, even music would trigger, even somebody saying something, the way somebody would walk by me, or the way sometimes I see some people sitting down, just triggers these memories that sometimes make you almost kind of miss that life, but there's really nothing to miss because I was completely empty. So now my son's 3 months old. I'm supposed to start college this day, and instead of going to college, I decided I'm gonna go with the homies, and we're just gonna go do a couple more jales, like we would say, for no reason. We had done about 3, we should have been done, but me, I had this urge that I wanted to continue. I remember I had dropped my son off that particular night at my mother's, and my mother had kind of warned me. She had said, if you continue living this life, for sure something's gonna happen. And it's as if I wanted to kind of test it and say, yeah, come on, show me. So I went out that night, we continued, and the last crime that we did, I ended up carjacking 2 narcotics. So after a big high-speed chase, nothing ended up going well. Once you carjack 2 cops, it is absolutely not going well. So it ended up being an ordeal for about 45 minutes ultimately until we crashed the car, we get arrested. And me, I'm still thinking, well, this is no big deal. Like, what is this? I'm just getting arrested for carjacking some cops. It's not like I killed them. I didn't shoot them. My homies did. It wasn't me. So what's the big deal? I was completely mistaken, because from that day on, they took my freedom away. I ended up staying in the county jail for about 1 year fighting my case. And I was looking at about 22 years too. Yeah, 22 to 25 years, because on top of that, one of my bright crime partners had decided to leave evidence of all the other crimes we had committed before. So not only did I get arrested for what I got arrested, they found out about everything that we had done that night. And could you believe that this whole time that I was arrested, I did not once think of my son, not at first. It's completely sad. He didn't pop in my head. I didn't say I'm gonna miss him. The only thing that I thought is, oh my God, what's gonna happen now? I'm arrested? Like, what now? I don't get to participate with people anymore? I don't get to go hang out? I don't get to do drugs? What is this? And no, that wasn't the case. So they sentenced me to 7 years, and it was completely hard, because one of the things that I realized, and I didn't know then, that what I valued the most out of everything was my freedom. And once my freedom got taken away, it was like if I was a bird who couldn't fly anymore. It absolutely killed me. But not only that, to be locked up in a place with strangers, people you don't know, people who eat a different way, chew a different way, smell a different way, talk a different way. I mean, it was just completely mind-baffling to me. And every time we needed to do the squat and cough, and you see 50 asses lined up, and it just smelled horrible, it was not something that I could ever imagine. But it was too late. I was already arrested. I was there. It didn't matter whether I cried, kicked, or screamed. I wasn't going anywhere. I ended up finding this lawyer, and at least he was nice. He had compassion for my son. But he also was this lawyer who was a bit tough, okay? Because he didn't like me too much, because he could see that I just didn't care about my son. Things have changed now, but at the time I was kind of somebody who had no soul, like I had no compassion or anything like that. I end up going to Chowchilla to serve the rest of my time there. And as I'm in Chowchilla, well, you know, I'm not gonna work. I didn't go to jail to work, so I decide that I'm gonna just do all my time because I'm a gangster supposedly in my mind, and there's no way anybody's gonna send me to work if I didn't work outside. But little in time, you know how it is once you're in jail and in prison, you get to learn the ropes, you get to meet people, you figure out how the system is, and I ended up meeting and getting close to all the lifers, and that was really important. I didn't know how important it was gonna be till I started to meet them. And I met all the lifers, then I got super close to them. Some of them were people that I had read on the magazine, some of them were people who I had seen on shows like Dateline. But to get to know them as people and then kind of realize also that it didn't matter that I lived with people from all over the world. However it was, that we were all still people. And most of the people who were in prison, they weren't there because they wanted to be in prison. It's certain circumstances like a domino effect. And they didn't understand why. So I spent the rest of my time getting to know these women. And as I found out, most of these women who were serving life sentences were serving life sentences for killing their husband who molested their child, for perhaps killing their rapist, or doing sort of things that I wasn't. And here I was, going home. I had a date, but I had zero compassion and zero value for people. And here were these women who were there, who just for some odd luck, they ended up getting sentenced to life and they're never going home. So I decided to get to know him, and as I got to know him, I realized that, wow, they were beautiful people. More beautiful, some of them, than even some of the gangsters that I had met around. They had soul, they had life, but that was it for them. They weren't going home anymore. So I decided that I spend my last sentence getting to know them as much as I possibly could, and I promised them that once I got out, I would share as much as I could their story. There was this one lady, Deborah Pigler, because I ended up also being a bit racist for a little while. Deborah Pigler was in prison. They did a documentary about her. It's called, I believe, Crime After Crime. It's in there because, you know, she took too far and they ended up murdering her ex-boyfriend. She was involved, but it was during the time where the sentences were harsh, and especially if you're a person of color, you know, they were even harsher on you. And I remember she would play with my hair and hug me, and not in a lesbian way at all. You know, over there we make families, and she was more kind of like my play mom. And I remember her telling me that I reminded her a lot about her child. That her child had been raped, and that's why they ended up killing him. And that's why she's in there. And she probably was never going to go and hold her child. But I was. I can go home and I can have another chance. And little by little, I started feeling compassion for people. So I decided that when I got released, I was for sure going to get it together. So the time came for me to be released after I served 4 years, because in the end, I ended up doing computer programming or something, you know, one of those classes. I thought maybe it would teach me how to become a hacker. I still wanted to come out and do bad things. But for that last year, I came out and I decided that I was never, ever, 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 ever again going to do anything to jeopardize my freedom, and that I would somehow try to rebuild the relationship with my son. But it's easier said than done, right? You get released with $200, at least that's what I was, and I needed to start all over again. I didn't have a place, a car, absolutely just my mom. And what my mom pretty much did was she rented an apartment for me, and she told me, I'm paying you first month's rent, good luck to you. And she kept my son. I decided not to take my son, so it was pretty hard also for the first couple of weeks of being out. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to recover, and this was in 2002. I had nothing, but I had hope. That's the one thing that I had. And then I started thinking, how is it that it was so easy for me to get into the bad life? How is it that it was so easy for me to quickly find these bad people? So you know what? I'm going to use those same hustle skills that I used for them, and I'm going to apply them to make sure that I stay out. So I said, okay, what's the first thing that I have to do? I decided that I would get rid of the shame. I looked at myself in the mirror. I admitted that I was a piece of shit to myself, that there was a time, not anymore, but there was a time in my life where I really wasn't worth much, okay? And I committed those crimes not because anybody made me, but because I wanted to. And once I got rid of that shame, that first shame, it was so much easier for me to think a little bit clearer and say, okay, great, now what do I do next? So I'm not advising everyone to do this, but I would kind of say, hi, my name's Claudine, I just got out of prison. Hi, my name's Claudine, I just got out of prison. There wasn't a person I didn't tell. Even my husband, the first thing that I told him was, listen, I just got out of prison. It's been a couple of years. I'm just trying to get my life back. I'm absolutely nowhere. You should just keep walking. And you know what I realized? Almost nobody ever kept walking. Everyone wanted to know more because I was open, because I was honest, because I was wearing what's supposed to be shameful. I was wearing it on my sleeve and I was telling everybody. Once that came, then what's the next step? I decided to take responsibility. Take responsibility exactly for who I was, what I was doing, what I did, and then I needed to make a plan. Now I knew that for me, everyone has to find something that moves you. At least me, I knew that the entertainment was something that I absolutely loved. There was a rush there. Because of the movies, I've always liked it. But I knew that I wasn't gonna get out of prison and go work for an entertainment company right away. It wasn't gonna happen like that. So I started looking for work, to be a secretary, to be a waitress, to sell cards, but I wasn't getting hired absolutely nowhere. So I decided to enroll back in college, and I'm sitting one day in a car listening to the radio, and I heard Steve Harvey talking with this guy, Jim Brown. At the time, I didn't know who Jim Brown was. And they were talking about recidivism and how important it is for women to support men when they get out of prison, and it infuriated me. Not only it infuriated me because they were talking about prison, but why were they just asking the women to support the men? Here I am, a woman, I don't have a job. Why can't it be the other one? Why can't also men support women? So I tried to call the radio station, I tried to get through, and I couldn't get through the 1-800 number. But Jim Brown did leave a number, did leave the name of his organization, which was called American. So at the time, I wasn't savvy with the website, and I don't think the web was that advanced. So I went to the payphone, 411, got the number of American, and I left a message saying that I didn't appreciate what I had heard. Okay, and I think I told them, I left them my house number, and I told them that if anybody wanted to talk to me about it, they could, because I just got out of prison and I didn't have shit. I mean, I just pretty much let them know everything. And the following day, somebody gave me a call, and we actually got into a small argument over what I was saying. I got the address, I ended up showing up at this particular place, and that's the day that I met Jim Brown, and I ended up telling them my story. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because my persistence to get somewhere eventually opened doors. They didn't hire me to do anything, but I told them, listen, I'm willing to volunteer, I'm willing to work for free, I'm willing to do anything just as long as you give me a reference. So they said, really? I said, I'll answer phones. This is what I want to do. I figured if I answer phones, they might get celebrity or people from the radio station who call, and then I'll just reach on to them. That was my way. So I worked for about 2 weeks, and exactly in 2 weeks, there was this lady who came in called Dominique Duprimo, who was also on the air, and I just kind of went up to her and said, listen, I need to work for you. Can I work for you? And she said, absolutely not. Who are you? You don't have no skills. And I said, can I be your intern? Can I volunteer? Can I just get you coffee every morning? I just got out of prison, I need a job. Here I go again with my same story. But it worked. She told me, you know what, the next day, show up at 5 a.m. at the radio station with coffee. I said, okay, no problem. I showed up at 4:45 with not one coffee, 2 coffees, okay? And I stayed. But so from there, I ended up working with her for about 2 weeks, and here goes my luck, she ends up getting fired. So when she ends up getting fired, she calls me that morning, she says, Claudine, I'm fired, so I'm not sure what to tell you. And I said, but can I go to your office? Can I clean your desk? Because I thought maybe if I go, I can talk to someone. So she said, sure, go. So I went up to the office, I cleaned her desk, and right when I was walking in the studio where Steve Harvey talked was there was the red light, and as soon as the red light went off, I opened the door up. I said, hi, Steve. I remember that I was shaking. I was like, listen, Steve, you're black, I'm brown. You need to give me a chance. I need a job. I just got out of prison. What can you do? Can you help me? I couldn't even breathe or talk. And I remember he looked around and he said, who let this little motherfucker in? Who let you in, you know? And I was like, listen, I just work for just Dominic the Prima, and you just fired her, but listen, I just need a job, I just need a second chance. So he looked at me and he said, you know what, kid, follow me. He took me to the promotions director, and I was hired that day. And when they would tell me to show up at 5, I'd show up half an hour or 15 minutes earlier. But I said all that to say that sometimes when you get out of prison and you're in a place that you think there's no way out, you just never know where opportunities are gonna come from. But the opportunities aren't gonna come unless you're willing to jump. I was willing to make those phone calls and cry. And if you don't cry, no one's gonna give you anything. And yeah, maybe you're gonna get some rejections. It's gonna happen. Some people are gonna say no. There's tons of those people. But there's always gonna be that one person who's gonna see through your eyes and is gonna say, you know what? Maybe you got something there. So I ended up working really hard, and after being there 3 years, I ended up getting recruited to another radio station, Latino 96.3, when that station was still on. And I was really proud of myself because my parole officer would show up to my work to check on me, but I was a parolee working in the radio station with everyone else, had nowhere near the same past that I did. And I wasn't ashamed to tell them that I used to be a drug addict. I wasn't ashamed at all. But because I wasn't, that's what opened so many more doors for me. And from there, I ended up getting other jobs. Later, I met my husband. And when I met my husband, it was also a time when we were struggling. He wasn't set, so we started from zero. He was working and moving. So it's not like if I met my husband and then from there, everything became great. Today, we're business owners. I helped them open up a construction company that we started from scratch. I am a mom again. I got a chance to have 2 other kids. I'm still trying to rebuild my relationship with my first son. And I'm not sure that it's gonna ever be 100% healed. I'm gonna be honest with you, okay? There's no completely happily ever after. I created so much damage. I abandoned him. I wasn't there for him. That still today, I understand him. He has a hard time accepting me. He has a hard time loving me, and he has a hard time forgiving me. And it's hard for me to accept it, but I made my bed and I gotta lay in it. And the only thing that I could do is show him that I will no longer be the person that I was before, and just continue to live in the right path and make sure that I no longer associate with anybody from before. Because even associating with people from before, from your past, at least for me, creates triggers, certain likelihoods that can make you one day, just one day, maybe slip just a little. And when you're in such a delicate position as the one that I was, and when you're getting out, and when you're in recovery, and when you're trying to get whole, it's completely important to stay away, to make a plan, to take responsibility, and to get rid of all the shame that you can possibly have. Because you did it, it's all right. There's some people who aren't gonna accept you anyways. You don't need those people. And the people who are gonna accept you right away, they will, regardless of what your past is. Can I know how much time I have left? I don't know, sometimes I talk a lot and I can't tell.
7 minutes.
Oh, 7 minutes, okay. And so with all that being said, it hasn't been easy, okay, being out. There's been times where, in the beginning, especially from 2002 all the way till 2007, where there were days and moments where I would get up and I wasn't sure if I was gonna make it. I wasn't sure if there wasn't gonna be that one day where I was gonna get so tempted that I was gonna pick up the phone and maybe call one of the homies, or just have another line that would lead to another line that would lead to another line. But I knew that I couldn't do that. And also finding the right partner, or the right somebody who's gonna encourage you, the right husband, or the right wife, or the right friend, or who's gonna be there for you to give you that encouragement is completely important. You have to absolutely have somebody around who's gonna encourage you at all times and support your sobriety. And I also mean sobriety from getting high out of just carjacking people. Because I mean, it was even almost for me like a high. If you would tell me, here, do you want to do coke, or do you want to go and carjack some people? Well, let's go for the thrill of carjacking some people. I'm not a thief, because I like people to know that I'm taking their shit. I'm a robber. It was so much at that time. And it's not like if I'm glamorizing it, but it was this thrill that it felt like it did. But the aftermath and the consequences of what came after were extremely terrible, and they're not worth it. And until today, no matter what, I'm always gonna have that scar of being incarcerated, because somebody taking your freedom away is never easy. I think about it every day. If I get a chance, I talk about it every day. And I think it's important because it's sort of therapeutic. And I might one day get to a point in my life where maybe it won't affect me anymore. But no, for me it affected me. To leave my family, to get my family taken away, to have to start from zero, to have to show people your ass, to have to be locked up in a place, to not be able to do what you want to do, people telling you when to go to sleep, when not to go to sleep, being around people, it's not something that you want. And you know, life is so short. If we compare our life to the amount of time the planet has existed, it's nothing. It's absolutely, it's like 1 second, we're here today and we're gone tomorrow. So I don't think it's worth it, at least for me, to have wasted in that way. And now that I'm on the other side, it feels much better. Because of my past, I decided that to found an organization for children of incarcerated parents. It's super important. I want to help to establish maybe, you know how they have like a national day? So I want to have a national day for children of incarcerated parents, change some policies, so it could be a little bit better. So kids who stay behind, when we leave them, they don't get to suffer as much and have all the traumas that go along with that. And yes.